Last week, we explored the evolving economic ties between Canada and Taiwan, two economies often living in the shadows of their giant neighbors, yet quietly charting their own path forward. We looked at how both countries are tackling similar challenges in housing, labor, and trade, despite Canada's population boom and Taiwan's demographic decline, and this all happened as we celebrated Canada Day just a few days ago. Now, at the center of that story was the Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Agreement, or known as FIPA, FIPPA, signed in the late 2024, which has been quietly opening doors for businesses, education, and even green energy cooperation. We also heard from Ed Jaeger, the Senior Trade Commissioner at the Canadian Trade Office in Taipei, or CTOT, about the growing desire of both sides to build a deeper relationship, not just through diplomacy, but through cultural exchange, clean tech, and investment. If there's one thing in common, a common thread, if you will, that quietly holds both economies together, it's the SMEs. In both Canada and Taiwan, small and medium enterprises are not just the backbone of the economy, they are the economy. In Canada, SMEs account for about 98% of all employer businesses and employ nearly 90% of the private workforce, according to StatsCan. In Taiwan, the numbers are just as staggering. 97.7% of all enterprises are classified as SMEs, and they contribute around 80% of total employment nationwide. And yet, both countries' SMEs face similar struggles: limited access to global markets, difficulty scaling, talent retention issues, and regulatory hurdles, especially when trying to do international business. So let's start in Taiwan. Many Taiwanese SMEs are family-run, often passed down through generations. They're deeply rooted in manufacturing, from precision components and textiles to food processing and electronics. But their size makes it hard to invest in R&D or enter distant markets like Canada. That's where government programs like Taiwan's Go Global initiative and partnerships through MOEA, or Ministry of Economic Affairs, come in, offering trade show subsidies, soft loans, and overseas office support. But even with that help, navigating foreign business cultures can be daunting. Canadian businesses and business norms, with their emphasis on transparency, ESG, and former contracts, can seem unfamiliar to Taiwanese businesses. This is where trade offices like CTOT bridges the gap. Now, look at Canadian SMEs. Unlike Taiwan's export-heavy model, Canadian SMEs are often domestically focused, especially those in service sectors or rural areas. Less than 12% of Canadian SMEs export at all, and when they do, it's usually to the United States. Asia, that's a bit of a leap. And that's why the FIPA deal matters so much. With the agreement in place, the Canadian Trade Office in Taipei has been actively promoting Taiwanese partnerships, not just tech hubs like Toronto or Vancouver, but in lesser-known regions. In our conversation, Ed Jaeger mentioned companies from, say, Prince Edward Island and Manitoba making inroads here, places rarely on the radar of Taiwanese investors. So what's the appeal? Well, I guess complementarity. Taiwan brings precision manufacturing, hardware know-how, and flexible production, whereas Canada offers robust R&D, a clean energy roadmap, and world-class universities. Together, they can co-develop in fields like quantum tech, green energy, and AI-driven manufacturing. It's not just a trade exchange, it's co-creation. But support structures are crucial. Taiwan has incubating centers like, for example, Startup Terrace and TTA, that's Taiwan Tech Arena. Canada, on the other hand, has the Trade Commissioner Service and regional innovation hubs like the MARS in Toronto and Innovate BC in British Columbia. These ecosystems are finally beginning to talk to each other. Yet one hurdle remains: visibility. Many SMEs don't know these opportunities exist or assume they're too small to matter. That's why Ed's team has emphasized economic storytelling. They're trying to replace abstract trade data with real human stories of small businesses that took the leap and found partners halfway around the Pacific. So maybe it's not just about trade deals or MOUs. Maybe it's about making sure the people behind these deals, founders, engineers, students, and families, see themselves as part of the same story. So today we continue our conversation with Ed Jaeger. In part one, we covered trade diplomacy and Canada Day Putin. But in this segment, we're zooming in on the sectors and strategies that mattered the most to the small players in both economies. What does investment really look like on the ground? Which industries are gaining traction? And how do you explain FIPA to someone who just wants to know if their startup has a future overseas? So let's get back to it, but let's start by asking Ed once again exactly what his office does. That is the Canadian Trade Office in Taipei.
The biggest part of this mission is probably, first of all, the trade and investment section in terms of numbers of people. So we do exactly that. We try to help Canadian companies, a lot of small and medium enterprises as well, because it's difficult for smaller companies to get into markets like Taiwan. And so we're here to help them. I mean, as you know, Canada's economy is dominated, especially by the small and medium-sized enterprises. And generally speaking, SMEs are underrepresented in international trade. So that's a big part of what we do here on the trade side. But the other important half of this office, of course, is our general relations. And my colleagues in the general relations team, they are dedicated to sort of helping advance Canadian interests and values with a wide range of Taiwanese interlocutors, from the Taiwanese government to universities to think tanks and so on. As my colleague says, they like to think of themselves as explaining Canada to Taiwanese and explaining Taiwanese to Canadians.
Okay, just out of a proportion, how much of your job on a day-to-day basis is bringing Taiwanese investment to Canada, and how much of it is introducing Taiwan's general economic atmosphere to Canadian entrepreneurs?
I would say that, if I look at my office here and what people are doing, I would say about 75% of what we do is helping Canadian companies come to Taiwan and do business here. Okay, the other 25% is more at bringing Taiwanese companies to Canada and helping them build relationships there that could lead to investments.
Okay, in that sense, so you said 75% of bringing Canadian businesses to Taiwan. In that sense, what sectors are you seeing more people are interested in about Taiwan?
The biggest thing, of course, is that Taiwan and Canada have some real complementarity in terms of Taiwan's manufacturing capability and Canada's R&D and research and design capabilities. And so when it comes to even semiconductors, when it comes to that whole industry, of the whole electronic industry, there's a lot of compatibility there. I mean, think about TSMC, for example. Everyone in the world knows TSMC, but they don't know, for example, that if you go to the west end of Ottawa, there's a TSMC office there full of chip designers who are doing some of TSMC's best work in terms of chip design in Ottawa. And we have a rich ecosystem of universities producing out really smart people right across Canada. And Taiwanese companies are looking at that and listening to that and building on that. Last week, one of my officers was in Toronto and Montreal with a couple of Taiwanese high-tech companies looking at quantum and quantum-related issues. There was a quantum show in Montreal that they were attending. Those are the sorts of things that really matter to us and we're really growing in. But at the same time, also real interest in sustainability and clean energy and clean tech and green energy, and these sorts of things are areas that really matter to us as well.
Yeah, I think especially that last couple of points, the new Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has also been well known in advocating for clean energy, for sustainability, green energy. He's written papers on it. He's given speeches on it. So I'm sure you also see that Taiwan and Canada are aiming for this net zero 2050 goal. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot more collaboration on that front coming through your office, eh?
Yeah, I would imagine that will continue to grow. The reality is before Prime Minister Carney took his current position, we were already well primed in terms of Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, where one of the 5 pillars of that strategy is about sustainability. And so it was already a really big part of our approach here. And in fact, here in this office, as a simple matter, we had one officer who was only doing part of her work was green energy and clean tech. And I have removed other responsibilities off of her desk, and so that she is focused primarily only on that sector now. And so that's a big deal for us. And one small part of that is that the fact that Canada's largest investments in Taiwan is in the offshore wind sector.
Oh, really?
There are billions of Canadian dollars in the offshore wind. 2 primary players. First of all, a Toronto-based company called Northern Power Incorporated, NPI for short, is a partner in the Hai Long Consortium, which just 2 weeks ago flipped the switch to start bringing power onshore from their project out in the Taiwan Straits. And then the other big player is the Quebec Pension Plan, CDPQ, as it's known by short, which has a very significant part in the project, which is managed by the Danish company Ørsted, Changhua 1 and 2, I think it's called. And so literally billions of Canadian dollars here in Taiwan, in the Taiwan Straits.
Yeah, the Taiwan Straits is known for a lot of wind power that can be generated. You yourself, I'm guessing, I mean, you confirmed this for me. I was suspecting that Jaeger is a Dutch last name, correct? So that's your family heritage. How proud are you to see all of these windmills or, wind farms being set up in Taiwan?
You're absolutely correct in identifying Jaeger as a Dutch last name. In fact, I was born there, and my family immigrated to Canada when I was an infant still. Although I was raised entirely in Canada, I was born in the Netherlands. Can't say that windmills are in my heritage that strong, but I must admit that the first thing I did when I got to Taiwan a couple of years ago was take a weekend in Tainan and have a look at the remnants of Dutch participation in the growth of Taiwan.
Yeah, we definitely have a good recording and definitely a lot of historic landmarks along those sides of Taiwan. I would say most of Taiwan's first European visitors are remembered quite fondly because they definitely stimulated Taiwan's economy, which is certainly what you are doing now. So I don't know if this is correct in saying that your team and you did a lot of work on the ground to push forward the Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Agreement, or also known as FIPA. Is that correct?
The reality, of course, is that the negotiation of the FIPA is done by specialists from Ottawa. We do our best to assist them, to support them, and work closely with our Taiwanese counterparts at the Office of Trade Negotiations. But yes, it took quite a few years to get us to the point where we could see that arrangement signed in December of 2023. But it's something that matters a lot to us, and we did our best to be supportive of those negotiations.
As the average Joe asking about what FIPA is, does it affect us tax-wise, or does it mainly affect corporations?
It's about investments that basically have control. Mm-hmm. So it's not about individual taxes, it's not about individual investments, portfolio investments, but it's for corporations to give them predictability and transparency about our relationships. The reality is there are jurisdictions around the world where we really worry about what the next government's going to do to Canadian investments. And we put these documents in place so that Canadian investors may have some sort of ability to get help if there's a problem down the road. We don't have those kind of conditions between Canada and Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
We're very comfortable about each other's governments. We're very comfortable about each other's legal regimes. And so it's more about the promotion part of it than the protection part of it. Remember, FIPA actually has two P's, FIPPA, and the promotion and protection. And so while there is protection elements about, making sure that Canadian companies are treated like Taiwanese companies, and in Taiwan and in Canada, the reverse, and so on. And there are expropriation things and so on. It really is, first of all, about making sure that companies know that we do want each other's investment, that we will treat it fairly, that they will be in a good environment, and that we'll do our best to promote investment going both directions.
Do you feel like that promotion has been successful since the signing of FIPA? Because just based on my preliminary research, I think there's been a pretty sizable increase since 2022 of bilateral trade between the two countries. Is that correct?
Oh, I would say absolutely. Bilateral trade and investment is continuing to increase. Investment numbers are always a bit dodgy because there's two kinds of investment. There's direct investment and indirect investment. Indirect investment goes through other jurisdictions. It's very hard for StatsCan to catch that and to record it. And so the numbers you're going to see on Statistics Canada only reflect direct investment, not the indirect stuff.
Okay.
But the reality is anecdotally, I can tell you there's continued growth of Canadian companies coming here and in the other direction. So there's certainly our efforts to attract investment is grown. Just last month, we had what we call an investment roadshow, where we had people from across Canada who work for economic development offices in municipalities and provinces come to Taiwan. And we had a full day event where in the morning we had some key speakers. In the afternoon, we had brought in companies from across Taiwan to talk to these investment experts from Canada. And out of that, we have some really good leads, some companies that people who had not considered places in Canada, like Prince Edward Island or Manitoba, that they had ever considered before, who are starting to talk about the possibility of investing in these places.
Yeah.
And so we certainly have seen an uptick in promotion as a result of the FIPA. And I expect that to continue long after I'm gone, because I believe that there are so many opportunities, so many good ways for this to continue, that I'm certain it will.
Yeah, there's so much work to be done there at, as you mentioned, PEI and Manitoba. That is even if Taiwanese investors or people generally know about these places. I think most people, when they think of Canada, if they can point it out on a map, are places like Vancouver and Toronto and Ottawa, where you're from. So there's a lot for Taiwanese people to learn about, for sure.
Indeed.
As Ed Jaeger finishes serving his 4-year term at CTOT, we hope that he will find the time to return to Taiwan, but also he helped us conclude this 2-part series. Now, it's easy to forget when we talk about international relations that most trade doesn't happen between countries. It happens between people. Behind every FIPA agreement, every wind farm investment, or every student exchange program, there's someone, usually a small team, a curious founder, or a family taking a leap, trying to build something across borders. For Taiwan and Canada, the SME might just be the hero of that story. Not flashy, not headline-grabbing, but quietly building the next era of bilateral resilience. Now, myself being Taiwanese Canadian, I've actually visited the Canadian Trade Office in Taipei several times. So it's a real honor to be able to catch up with Ed Jaeger, the Senior Trade Commissioner at the Canadian Trade Office in Taipei, CTOT. Now, as he finishes serving his 4-year term, he might just be relocating to another Asian city. I doubt he'll be leaving the region anytime soon, which means that we should be able to still see him back in Taipei. In any case, it's been a fun exploration to talk about the possible collaborations between Taiwan and Canada, and I do hope that we can create more podcasts or content with CTOT. Thank you for listening. I'm Joey Chow, and this has been Beyond the Reefs. Stay with us next week as we dive deeper into how clean tech, quantum research, and education could shape the next decade of Taiwan's economic development. Until then, take care.